Now, it seems like we are reporting more disruptive climate events than ever, and now the very serious problem of drought is hitting the parts of the US hard. Climate scientist Benjamin Cook is with us, and he's with the NASA Goddard Institute for Space Studies. Thanks very much for joining us on the program. So let's look at the background on the California drought. What's happening there, very quickly?
So, drought, or California is in the West, and the West of the United States is an area that experiences droughts regularly. Yep. This drought is pretty exceptional. It's probably the worst drought of the last 100 years, the history of California, and it may even be the worst drought over the last 1,000 years. The primary cause is just natural variability, kind of winds in the atmosphere that sort of steer storms away. But we think that climate change itself is probably making it a little bit drier, a little bit worse than it normally would be.
Just how much is climate change contributing to that?
That's hard to kind of nail down that number. I mean, the majority of it is kind of just natural variations in the atmosphere, but maybe on the order of 5 to 10%. It's worse by that much.
Now, this year's an El Nino year, and there's something we'll call an El Niño as well. Just quickly clarify what that is. Yeah, so when we talk about El Niños and La Niñas, we're talking about events happening in the tropical Pacific, and they can have a big impact on the atmosphere and cause different climate events in the United States. This year, we're starting to see the emergence of a really strong El Nino event, which actually tends to bring rain to the Southwest and parts of California. So we're hoping that with this El Nino event and its intensification, that it might bring some drought relief to California and the Southwest. So what's California doing about the drought in terms of restrictions? How are they actually combating the drought?
So California's been in a variety of different restrictions. A lot of it's complicated by the different water laws and the water rules that don't make much physical sense, but they're kind of grandfathered in over the last 100 years of water use in the West. And this includes just increased efficiency, requirements that people cut their use by certain percentages, and so they're certainly doing what they can to try to reduce water use and water demand. And
they're having to drill right down to the aquifers, aren't they, to get the water that's remaining there?
Right, so one of the ways that we typically deal with droughts, including in California, is to pump groundwater. And groundwater is basically what we call fossil water, water that once we use it, it's kind of gone and no longer available. And what we've seen with this recent drought is that we've really depleted much of our groundwater reserves in California, which means that the next time a drought comes, they might not be available.
You said this is the worst drought on record in over 1,000 years or so. What is that going to do for the economy? What is that going to do for tourism, let alone the people who live there?
Yeah, well, so the biggest impact is obviously agriculture, and that's really important in California because California produces by far the majority of our domestically grown crops. And so that kind of propagates through the food system in the rest of the United States. They produce a lot of alfalfa, the feed for cattle that are raised in other parts of the U.S., and they export a lot of food internationally. They grow most of the world's almonds. And so, certainly we expect that there's going to be some big impacts in agriculture down the line as we move into basically a warmer and drier world.
So that's going to have an impact in terms of the markets, surely, in terms of what can be delivered in foodstuffs and goods, and it'll increase the price of these foodstuffs and goods.
Absolutely, and we've already seen changes in food prices, increases in food prices over the last couple of years, coinciding with this drought in California and the drought that just recently ended in Texas.
Okay, let's talk about the energy impact. How is this going to impact in terms of energy farmers?
So California gets a fair amount of its power from hydropower. Because of the drought, their hydropower generation has declined, and they've been forced to both increase utility prices and also rely on dirtier forms of energy, such as coal and oil. And so obviously that can kind of propagate because everybody needs energy, and then it can affect lots of
Let's talk about tourism and leisure as well. How is this going to impact tourism and leisure going forward?
A few ways, but probably the primary way is the ski industry. So most of the precipitation comes as snow during the wintertime. And what we've seen, especially this last year, is that a lot of the snow that California expects that supports many of these ski areas just didn't come or just melted early. And so this puts another kind of hardship on the ski industry, forcing them to create their own snow and even end their operational season early.
Benjamin, we've got to leave it there, but very quickly, this is going to get worse than it gets better.
In the long term, yes.
Okay, all right, we must leave it there. Thanks very much for joining us, Benjamin.
Thank you.